See, this is my problem with this. This is not a small problem, and I believe that the Christian authoritarian humanists have a serious plan for this moving forward. And we can.
What's the plan?
Well, we are going to do a mass propaganda campaign to get women out of the workforce and back into the kitchen, baby.
Jake Rattlesnake takes on PlanetPeterson on Modern Day Debate, and the prompt is whether Christianity or secular humanism is better for society. To be fair to PlanetPeterson, he is an atheist and doesn't understand that materialism makes you retarded. So with that in mind, it was a pretty good conversation. Jake's opening statement puts PlanetPeterson into a box that I do not think he was able to argue out of. Let's get into it.
In the spirit of absolute divine justice and for the integrity of all of mankind. It's actually remarkable how closely my views align with my opponents, albeit with a subtle but crucial nuance. And it reads as follows. Number 1, knowledge of the world is derived by observation, experimentation, and rational analysis. Human beings are complex, imperfect creations, yet Christian authoritarian humanists hold that science is an effective tool to guiding humanity towards its ideal form. Whilst original sin corrupted man, science can assist in enhancing the qualities necessary for flourishing. Humans are an integral part of nature. Number 2, humans are an integral part of nature, the result of divine creation. We recognize nature as self-existing and accept the life God has given us as sufficient and complete. Number 3, ethical values are derived from God's preferences, needs, and interests, as tested by human experience. Christian authoritarian humanists ground their values in God's concern for human welfare extended out to the global ecosystem. We are committed to cultivating individuals of inherent worth and dignity, making informed choices in the context of intelligence and resilience, and acting responsibly towards family and God. Number 4, life fulfillment emerges from participation in the service of God's ideals. We strive for our fullest development, animating our lives with purpose rooted in God. We find wonder in the pursuit of intergenerational human flourishing, embracing challenges and tragedies, even in the inevitability of death. Christian authoritarian humanists rely on the rich heritage of biblical culture and God's providence to provide comfort in times of want and encouragement in times of plenty. Number 5, humans are social by nature and find meaning in relationships with those who resemble them. We aspire toward a world of mutual understanding grounded in shared racial, political, and social relations, resolving differences cooperatively without resorting to violence. The combination of individuality and state guidance enriches our lives and inspires us to enrich the lives of others just like us, fostering peace, justice, and opportunity for those of our kind. Number 6, working to the benefit of the state benefits society, which maximizes individual happiness. Conservative cultures have tirelessly worked to elevate humanity above the brutalities of foreign savages, degenerates, and all who defy God's edicts, promoting human flourishing, reducing suffering, and developing a global community among those of shared values. We aim to minimize inequities of circumstance and ability, using science to preemptively eliminate conditions that hinder the development of intergenerational human flourishing. We advocate for positive stewardship of nature's resources, focused on mankind's ability to utilize them for life, flourishing, and progress. In conclusion, what I'm advocating for through my manifesto is maximal intergenerational human thriving for all, where the church and the state have a symbiotic relationship. We believe in elevating the social status of women, whose central role in humanity must be recognized through education and their nature and their natural capacity for motherhood. Humans cannot exist without women, and their contribution is both vital and sacred. In the name of progress, justice, and the continuation of humanity, we advocate for the responsible cultivation of this resource. And what does my opponent advocate for? Well, what you're going to notice throughout the entire course of this debate is that he will advocate for measures that are low time preference, meaning only good for the here and now, autonomy, my freedom, my rights at the expense of future generations. I argue, within reason, for the responsible use of authority to prevent behaviours detrimental to future generations, securing long-term flourishing of humanity and the realisation of the greater good. With that, I cede my time.
That's how you open a debate!
All righty. Thank you for that opening statement.
So let's unpack Jake's opening statement, because what we just witnessed was a systematic dismantling of the secular humanist paradigm. PlanetPeterson was effectively boxed into a corner. Jake's primary strength here is his precise description of our current cultural moment. We are watching the real-time consequences of hyper-individualism, feminism, and the erosion of the nuclear family, which must be foundational. The secular humanist framework attempts to maintain the moral and social capital of a functioning society, essentially the fruits of a Christian, classical, traditionally grounded worldview, while actively severing the roots. They operate on the assumption that you can remove objective truth from the equation and not compromise the structural integrity of the entire culture. What Jake did so effectively was confront the uncomfortable metrics of this observable decline. He bypassed the abstract academic theories that secularists often hide behind and points directly to the tangible demographic realities, offering up this magnificent Christian authoritarian secular humanism, which we will call cash. Yes, cash. And he highlighted the exact structural decay that the mainstream narrative actively avoids addressing and has rarely thought about deeply. And this is why his prescriptions are not just relevant, but entirely necessary. Turning the tide requires more than superficial policy shifts. It requires a return to objective morality and a restoration of traditional social structures, starting with the family. We have to reestablish a grounding in something transcendent, an actual unifying logos, rather than settling for postmodern relativism. Jake proved that when you force secular humanism to answer for the gritty realities of human nature, its foundations simply cannot hold.
All right, PlanetPeterson, I would first like to know which humanist manifesto you follow. Is it 1, is it 2, is it 3?
I don't follow any manifestos.
So it's the PlanetPeterson manifesto?
No. Do you know it? I don't think you know what secular humanism is.
Well, secular humanism has 3 manifestos, right?
It's the manifestos are not what secular humanism is. I defined it in my opening.
But so what do you follow then? Is it just PlanetPeterson's manifesto?
No, I don't know what you mean by what do I follow. I mean, I try not to break the law. I have all kinds of private ideas, and yeah, try not to. I have all kinds of private ideas, but I get my inspiration from the culture I live in. Everybody does that. I think the vast majority, I went over this in my history lesson, but the vast majority of the good ideas that have shaped this world that you and I can comfortably live in, anybody of any walk in faith can comfortably live in, are reasoned from a kind of secular humanism.
So private ideas. So it is. So you are the authority on secular humanism.
I explicitly said actually kind of the opposite of that. I said I do have my own private ideas, but I draw inspiration from the culture.
You draw inspiration, but we're talking about your ideas. We're not talking about this sort of fluffy language about I draw inspiration from the. Who is the authority? Does your worldview have a normative authority or not? I'm the authority of Christian authoritarian humanism.
I don't think that it has an authority because I don't think I actually have a question about that in here. So that's really funny that you said that. No, I don't claim to be an authority. I don't want to live under authoritarianism. I don't think you do as well. I mean, like you believe God has like the ultimate authority. So like in that
I think we already
sense,
live under authoritarianism.
I mean, okay, that's interesting, but no.
What's interesting about it? Tell me how we don't.
How do we not live under authoritarianism?
Yeah.
Because we have a society that is structured under the consent of the governed.
What do you think authoritarianism is?
Buddy, I'm not doing stupid shit like this.
You made a claim. You said we don't live under authoritarianism. What is it?
And you're trying to, you've strawmanned me already. You've called me dictator of the world. And now you're just trying to say, every time I make a statement, you say, define the last word that you said. So we live in a democracy. Democracies are not authoritarian.
I'm going to ask you again. You may not want to answer the question, but it is a debate. So what do you think authoritarianism is?
That's a good question. I would say it's something like subjugating the masses under ideas that are held by the few, the powerful, whatever.
Subjugating the masses under ideas that are held by the few. Interesting. Does that sound like the last 20 years under Democrat leadership? Woke ideologies held by a massive minority, DEI policies literally created to elevate minorities and degrade the majority. Feminism was pushed onto a population by a minority. I mean, under that definition, the list keeps going on.
I've actually got a definition. So we don't have proprietary definitions here. Proprietary definitions. I'll pull up a definition of authoritarianism and see if we can both agree to it, okay? James, the Wi-Fi's a little bit slow in here. Hey, it's okay. All right. So favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom.
Do you think that that's bad?
No.
Okay.
I think we live under that right now. Your secular humanist society that we currently live under.
I asked you if you think it's bad.
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you think that we should have unlimited personal freedoms and never have any authority? Is that what you're saying?
No.
So then you think it's good?
No, because if it comes from the consent of the governed, then it's not top down and dictatorial.
Buddy, that's what democracy is.
Sense.
You elect an authority and then you are obedient to the authority.
Yes, but we have representation and we have the power to dispose them if we want to.
But then there's another
by
authority.
Peaceful means. If you're just going to say that everything is authoritarianism, then okay. This isn't very interesting. And
I find it really interesting. Does the audience find it
nothing to do with Christianity.
I mean, look, like we live under an authoritarian. I think maybe you're thinking, I'm going to give you charity here. Maybe you're thinking of totalitarianism. That's not what I said. I said Christian authoritarian humanism. And we already live under an authoritarian society.
Yeah, we just disagree about that.
Okay, but let me help me to understand. Does your worldview, this secular humanist worldview that you adhere to, is there a normative authority? And what happens if another secular humanist comes to you and says, you know what, these Christians, I don't believe in God, but they make some pretty damn good points, and they govern. What's your beef with that?
What's my beef with if secular humanists say, hey, I listened to some Christians and they have good ideas?
Yeah, and we're going to govern accordingly, according to the Christian Authoritarian Humanist Manifesto.
Which doesn't exist, by the way. He copy and pasted the Secular Humanist Manifesto 3 and then just sprinkled Christianity on top of it.
I would never do that. I would never do that. But I'm glad you know what the Secular Humanist Manifesto is.
That was funny, but also perfect. By using the Secular Humanist Manifesto 3 as his foundation, Jake has effectively demonstrated the slippery slope. Because what if Jake did convince the entire secular world that cash was the correct manifesto to follow, and they rewrote the entire thing and adopted it into governance? How could PlanetPeterson argue that that was wrong?
A little bit.
Where were we before?
I don't know. I want to ask you some questions.
No.
So
we need to understand.
No, you don't get to tell me no.
We need to understand
that is absolutely
what
not
the authority
how this
is
going to work.
for secular humanism according to PlanetPeterson.
I have described
what do you
the
do?
principles of democracy already.
So democracy.
Yes, I think
democracy.
I think that's a very fine system to
Listen,
use.
What do you do if another secular humanist comes along and says, you know what, all this human thriving, these Christians, Christian authoritarian humanists, make a pretty damn good point. We're going to govern like that. What's your problem with that?
If the inspiration that those Christian secular humanists, that's funny, if the inspiration they draw from that is grounded in trying to understand the human condition and improve upon it, and believing that reason is our guiding principle, and they don't do it by saying, God is telling me we should do this, therefore we should do it, then it is just secularism, and I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, what is reason?
Reason is, that's an interesting question. I would just say it's the tool we use the mental tool we try to use to understand the world.
Am I using reason?
I don't think you're being reasonable, but I think so.
I think I'm using reason, so...
Yes, that's very secular.
So I used reason.
I take your concession.
If I'm a secular humanist and I've used my reason to come to the conclusion that Christianity and the principles of Christianity, Christian authoritarian humanism, are better than yours, what is your problem with that?
I already answered that question, but this is hypocritical of you because you're not relying on authority from God. You have separated yourself from God to do this.
I mentioned him.
Yeah, you mentioned him, but you have not drawn your inspiration from it. You haven't proclaimed.
Where else did I get it from?
You didn't pray about it. You didn't consult the council of bishops. Well, I feel like you would have said so. You're not. You are not, like, God isn't in the equation anywhere in here.
God isn't in the equation.
No, you haven't brought him up.
I use God's preferences.
No, you didn't.
I said, do you not listening? I said
You're trolling,
I
and
want
I'm
to
gonna ask
adhere
you
to
some
God's
questions.
to God's preferences. Honestly, I don't even know if this debate can move forward unless I really understand like the crux of your worldview. Because right now it is just pure fluff. It is just whatever PlanetPeterson says about being governed by reason. I've just demonstrated that I use reason. So what's the difference between you and I?
If you would have listened to my history lesson, you would have heard how I invoked philosophers who are both Christian and not Christian that informed the worldview that I espouse that I think is preferable. So I don't know what you're doing, but this is just ridiculous.
I'm trying to understand your worldview. I think I'm being pretty good faith here. I'm trying to understand. So you're saying that your philosophy, PlanetPeterson, is an amalgamation of various different philosophers over history, okay? And you think that God's not real, so then you think we should use this metaphysical concept of reason to arrive at a thriving society. Have I steel-manned it well?
That's not bad.
Okay, well that means...
Jake lays out PlanetPeterson's entire framework, and it's a Frankenstein's monster of cherry-picked philosophers stripping away God and relying entirely on the metaphysical concept of reason to build a thriving society. And Peterson agrees. He says, that's not bad. But here's the massive philosophical problem that Peterson just walked right into. He is engaging what's called philosophical smuggling. He wants to construct a worldview cafeteria style, taking a little bit from classical philosophers, a little bit from the secular humanist manifesto and whoever else, and then he calls the resulting subjective mashup reason. But if we look at classical philosophy, this completely falls apart. You cannot claim to champion reason or the mind while simultaneously denying transcendent categories. Think about it. Logic, mathematics, and the laws of reason are a priori truths. They are immaterial. They exist independently of human experience. The classical thinkers understood that to have objective reason, you must have an underlying objective order to the universe. PlanetPeterson is trying to sit at the adult table of philosophy using borrowed capital. He denies the transcendent source of order, yet he relies on the exact same order to validate his arguments. If there is no higher moral or logical grounding, then Peterson's reason is nothing more than subjective biological firing in his own brain. It makes his worldview entirely arbitrary. This puts his worldview on absolutely equal footing with Jake's in this debate, if not actually lower.
Nothing.
You just described it, and you're going to tell me that it means nothing?
I can describe something that means
Magic
nothing.
doesn't exist. What you believe is magic. Therefore, it's nothing.
I'll grant it, sure.
Okay.
All right.
How do we become a Christian society?
Well, a Christian authoritarian humanist society, you mean?
Jake, I'm actually interested in trying to have a somewhat intellectual exercise here.
I would love to, but I have no
But you're
idea
not
what you
going
think.
to. Great.
You're saying that you said to me before that things should be governed by reason. I demonstrated that I'm using reason. If somebody comes along to you as a secular humanist,
Then
and
that's just secularism.
and they are using different principles, you actually have no way to combat that.
There's nothing to combat because you literally just appealed to a secular process of reason.
A secular process.
I take
How is reason secular?
because you're not sourcing it in God.
What if I use reason to arrive at God?
Jake, when you reason, where is God doing any of the work?
If I use my own rational faculties, I'll grant to you, maybe God not real though, okay? Maybe God not real. If I
Even
use
if
my
God is
rational
real.
faculties to arrive at God, how am I not using reason?
I didn't say you're not using reason.
Okay,
I said
so
God's
then we're
not
back
part
to
of
the
the
start.
picture.
Equal playing field, I'm using reason, you're using reason. What separates us?
The way you keep twisting this is insane. I said God's not part of the equation, and then you admitted it, and then you flipped around and said to me, so Peterson, what's the problem? I don't have a problem here yet. Your problem is that you're just abandoning your faith.
How have I abandoned my faith?
Because you explicitly said God's not part of the reasoning process.
There's a difference between saying I will grant an argument for the sake of debate and saying that God isn't real. That's not what I said. I said I'll grant it for the sake of the debate just so we can potentially get somewhere with this.
You should have listened when I interrupted you, because I said even if God exists, the process of us using reason is secular.
How is it secular? So you're saying Christians can't use reason?
Where does God enter the equation when you have thoughts?
So you're
nowhere. You said that it's not part of the process.
Listen, so you're saying that Christians can't use reason?
No, I said when they use reason, that is divorced from God. It's not secular. There's no such thing as Christian math. There's no such thing as Christian science. There's no such thing as Christian me having an idea in my head. That makes zero sense.
But there is such thing as secular science, not just science.
Science just is secular.
So secular science is a thing.
I couldn't hear you.
Secular science, that's a thing.
Science is secular.
Science,
it's not, there's no God in the science.
Science is science.
Yeah.
It's not secular science, it's just science. Christians use science just as well as secularists use science.
When I say secular, what I'm really meaning is that it's just devoid of this one thing. So then, yes, it just becomes tautological. Science is science. Math is math.
Yeah.
There's no Jesus math. There's no Buddha math. There's no Muslim science. There's just, those things just are what they are.
PlanetPeterson claiming science is inherently secular is just historically inaccurate. Modern science didn't emerge from a secular anything. It was pioneered by theistic thinkers, from Byzantium, who were purely Christian, to Newton, who understood the universe was governed by a transcendent objective order, the classical logos. If reality is just a blind materialistic accident, there is zero reason it should be mathematically intelligible. Peterson is literally hijacking the fruits of a theistic worldview to prop up his subjective secularism without knowing it. Like most people, it's intellectually bankrupt. To understand the intellectual bankruptcy of the secularists like PlanetPeterson, you have to trace how the West slowly abandoned its transcendent grounding. Following Byzantium and the Great Schism, our worldview drifted into a flat, horizontal materialism that only splintered further into hyper-individualism during the Reformation. By the Enlightenment, human hubris took over entirely. We crowned ourselves the supreme arbiters of truth and systematically severed the theistic and historical roots that actually birthed modern science and logic. The ultimate irony is watching today's secularists try to claim those intellectual achievements, completely blind to the fact that they've killed the roots that justify them, but somehow still expect that tree to bear good fruit.
I've seen some of your stuff, and you seem to rant a lot against like feminism and like sexual immorality, stuff like that, and all this other stuff. So I haven't really heard you say how any of that would be bad for society beyond maybe like birth rates go down. So the other stuff is just stuff that you don't like. So why, like, is having to coexist with people you don't like your idea of an unhealthy society?
No, I think that you can coexist with people that you don't like all the time. I mean, in terms of feminism and degeneracy and these sorts of things, I think that you can see widespread negative effects of this, such as things like STDs amongst the population. You can also see, obviously, declining birth rates. Declining birth rates is actually not something that's insignificant. Declining birth rates means that over a long period of time, we're going to suffer significant population decreases.
I agree, and we have to do something about that, but in the United States, even the Christians are having fewer and fewer and fewer children. So
you said in your opening statement that all of the states are below replacement.
Yeah, no state in the United States is above the 2.2 threshold.
That was a very disingenuous straw man. I noticed that. Because do you know what the replacement rate is amongst Catholics and Orthodox?
I said there isn't a state. You're breaking it down to individuals.
I know what you said, but you're implying there that Christians aren't having kids anyway. That's a straw man.
No, I'm implying that there are states in the United States that are more or less Christian, but overall, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that we are a Christian nation? I'm not going to like...
I rode a kangaroo to school every day, and I'm a filthy, unwashed Australian. I'm not going to talk to you about American history. So, listen, do you know...
I just mean like presently. Is that what you think?
It's irrelevant to the debate. It's irrelevant to the debate.
It's not.
Listen, what do you actually know what the birth rates are amongst Catholics and Orthodox?
I've looked at the last time I looked at some Pew Research, and they hover between 1.8 and 2.2.
2.2 for Catholics
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah. And so they're at it, but that's why I wanted to ask, do you think we are a Christian? So even though we have a lot of Christians in this country, it still is not coinciding with positive birth rates. So I don't...
If the Christians are above replacement rate, the traditional Christian churches are above replacement rate,
But
and the secularists are all way below, then who's holding up the ship here?
We're largely Christian. So like so is your view then eventually all the secularists are going to die, the population of the country will go down because of that, but then once all the people like me are dead, then the Catholics and whatever will have more babies and then the population will go back up? Because I don't think that's
ideally
true.
That's not the case.
Because your birth rates are also declining. They're presently at replacement, but they've been declining. So there's no reason to not think that in 20 years or whatever, when we do these studies again, that Christians won't also be below replacement.
You might be right about that. But here's what I would say. I'd say the most positive thing that you can do is to promote family policies and to promote widespread propaganda about why people should have... Have you ever seen those Instagram reels where the woman's holding like a little baby cow in one arm and a baby in the other, and she's on a farmstead and all this sort of stuff?
No.
You never seen that?
No.
Well, you should watch it. It's good content. But this is an example of the kind of propaganda. Because what do you see right now? You see Boss Babe, oh, I'm in Dubai, blah. But if you had more propaganda aimed towards family policies, then I think this would be a positive thing.
Peterson points out that Christian birth rates are failing too. And statistically, he's not entirely wrong. Traditional Christians, though, Catholics and Orthodox believers, are hovering right around replacement levels, while secularists are in total demographic freefall. Plus, if you look at the rates that catechumens are entering the Orthodox Church right now, it's crazy. At least a couple new people every week at my church, if not more. And Jake makes the point that we will eventually outlast them, which is true. But let's be real. We don't have 100 years to wait for the secularists to just age themselves or sterilize themselves out of existence. The cultural rot is happening right now. And that is why Jake's pivot here is so crucial. He argues for unapologetic top-down promotion of the nuclear family and normative gender roles. And to the secularists, that sounds like authoritarianism. But to anyone paying attention, it's just the antidote to the poison we've been drinking. Because here is how the real cultural propaganda actually works and how it's possible within 50 years. We aren't talking about cheesy wartime posters, although that would work. We are talking about shifting the Overton window. It's a generational social engineering. The secularists did this brilliantly over the last half century. They took ideas that were completely unthinkable, normalized them through media and academia, and pushed them into policy until they just became the cultural water that we swim in. But the pendulum can swing both ways. If you implement a top-down narrative today that unapologetically promotes the nuclear family and objective virtue, it might feel radical to the mainstream right now. But if you sustain that for 50 years, you slowly move those principles from acceptable right back into default. You move them into the hearts of the population. Fast forward a few decades, and young men won't be finding traditional roles as some edgy countercultural rebellion. They will just inherit them as the expected foundational baseline of a sane civilization.
And the whole crux of my argument here is not that we're going to just start, turn the lights down low, making love, and doing it right now.
You and me, no, definitely not.
That's not the crux of my argument. The crux of my argument, if you noticed in my opening statement, is intergenerational human flourishing, which means the promotion of family policies that takes a long time. Look, I may be dead and gone by the time we achieve this, but I'm willing to lay down the seeds right now, that will grow a fruitful tree in the future. The problem that I see with the secularists is it's about my freedom right now, and you clearly don't even care about this problem.
About the replacement rate?
Yeah.
No, I do.
What's your prescription to fix it?
There are lots of ideas that have been tried. Not a lot of them work, unfortunately. Like some other countries, they've tried doing things like will give you like a massive first-time homebuyers discount if you have like a few children or whatever. And it works in the short term, and then it stops working in the long term.
Like in Hungary.
Yeah, I think they did that. So I don't know. My hope about the way it is, first of all, we have to get the like cost of living down, because that helps too. And I wish Christians would speak out more against like greed, corruption, and promote like austerity. I don't see enough of that like in our politics, which is, there's so much Christianity in our politics. So I hope that a positive Christian movement starts to infiltrate and help us out with that.
Can I say, I agree with you that economics is an aspect of it. And I agree with you that a lot of times these sort of family policies where they give first home buyers grants and everything to families, they sort of like can flatten the curve. And then in terms of economics, when you look at urbanization around the world, that's when birth rates tend to decline. But I think that the argument that you're making is that this is a cultural problem, that this can't be fixed by throwing money at it.
A little bit. So I'll try to make this point quick. What I kind of hope, and it is really just sort of hope, for an issue like that is we'll just get to a point in our society where the just sort of collective conscious of the society, which will penetrate everybody regardless of what you believe in. Yeah, see, hey, you started us down this road. So we're going to penetrate everybody, first of all, and then...
And I'm the authoritarian. Far out.
And that, I'm just hoping the look on your face is priceless. And then I just hope that swings things. So like, I'll give kind of a weird example, but like, you know how smoking used to be the most normalized thing in restaurants and airports or whatever?
Smoky man bad.
If you look at... It's bad for your health. Yeah. But if you look at a graph of lung cancer rates, it like in World War II, it was lower than any other type of cancer for like the death rate. And then it shot up and was stronger than all of the other cancers almost combined. But it's plummeted by like 50% since then. Because just as a society, we just said, look, we now know that this isn't good, it's not healthy. And there were educational campaigns for that. So a country can do that whether or not nobody in it's Christian or everybody in it is Christian. That's my hope.
So you're saying that you're hoping that the collective consciousness eventually turns around and everybody gets penetrated by collective consciousness.
I hope we appeal to that secular process of human reasoning.
So your prescription is that I hope in the future we have education campaigns. What would those education campaigns look like?
Education.
What would they be promoting?
They would be making babies, I guess.
So women not being in the workplace, for example, would this be maybe don't have an abortion? Like, what are we talking?
I haven't really thought about what it will look like, but
see, this is my problem with this. This is not a small problem, and I believe that the Christian authoritarian humanists have a serious plan for this moving forward. And we can.
What's the plan?
Well, we are going to do a mass propaganda campaign to get women out of the workforce and back into the kitchen, baby. Disincentivizing higher education for, unless it's something that they really need, more into support roles. And we're going to encourage motherhood as not something that's frowned upon or you're just a mom. Motherhood is going to be something that is venerated. Yeah. That's what we're going to do.
Okay.
And this, you may turn your nose up at this, but this is a cultural prescription. I think we've identified that it's a cultural problem. You can't just throw money at it. So we need to be culturally incentivizing people to make that.
So to wrap this all up, look at what Jake actually did in his opening statement. He exposed the fundamental reality of our cultural decay. He addressed the exact problem, and he laid out a tangible plan to fix it. Peterson, on the other hand, just has to hope that humans will naturally rise to some supreme moral position. But if history, classical philosophy, or theology mean absolutely anything, that is not how human nature works. It has never worked that way. And when you adopt a strictly materialist worldview, you are literally cutting yourself off from a whole different dimension of your mind. It completely limits how you see and interpret reality. Look at the ideologies that have been pushed on us for the past 60 years, like modern feminism and this recent woke ideology. At their foundation, they are inherently anti-human. I mean that literally. Carried to their logical conclusion, they lead to the demographic extinction of the human race. They erase vital concepts like duty and responsibility, and they replace them with radical autonomy and pure entitlement. They sever the exact metaphysical principles needed to maintain a sustainable, flourishing civilization. You have to understand that every single person has their worldview built on certain foundational beliefs, like whether the external world even exists, what a human being actually is and is meant for, and whether the universe has an objective purpose or is just meaningless. Those core beliefs shape every single action a person takes, and they dictate how they interpret everything they see. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about secular humanism and this debate around cash. Where do you stand? If you guys enjoyed the content, hit that like button, share the video, and make sure you subscribe for more. Until next time, stay unchained.